What's up, placebo?
That is pretty funny. Not much. Dan McGregor, what's up with you?
Man, I'm just living. We I'm excited, man, because I've been working on the garden all week. Like I planted potatoes a couple of weeks ago, and I've got other stuff coming. The only thing is, we are experiencing such a drought; it is unreal. We have not gotten 700 inches of rain in 2 weeks.
Dude, I'm telling you, today as we film, I worked and then I went outside and I got like my lawnmower because my grass is like, almost knee high. So I got my lawnmower and everything fixed up and ready to go. And as we talked last week, because we're filming on the Thursday this time, but tomorrow I'm off. So my plans were to get up in the morning, get my yard cut, get all the yard work done, and it's going to be raining all day long tomorrow. So wonderful news. So I
Surprise!
love I love when it rains. I love when like I have plans to do stuff and it just pours down rain. So yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. I've been waiting. I've got my trailer that I actually enclosed in. Put some two by
Hmm.
12s on there and zipped it in because I'm going to go get this super soil. And
Hmm.
every time I'm planning to go get it, and I'm
Oh
not
yeah,
going to pick up soaking wet freaking mud. So
yeah,
here we are.
totally with you.
Well,
Yeah,
are you ready to build a bar? Ready to build a bar?
let's do it.
All right. So on this wonderful Thursday night,
You.
would you please tell everyone what you brought and why?
Why? Okay. Well, tonight I decided to bring a bottle of Ezra Brooks 99.
Okay.
And two reasons I decided to bring this is number one, we haven't brought anything to the table yet from Lux Row. So I felt like kind of spreading the love. I mean, they do some really good stuff there. However, I will say this: we have their parent company is Luxco, and that same parent company owns Limestone Branch. So last week we brought a Limestone Branch, and in season one we talked about the regular Yellowstone, their flagship product. So we do have Luxco products on the bar, but we don't have anything from Lux Row. So that's why I brought that. And for 90, this is the reason it's 99. It's 99 proof, and so, but the Ezra Brooks 99 is a good solid bourbon for the price. So it's for those that are new to bourbon and new to whiskey, it's definitely one that has some characteristic that I think you would want on your bar, and for the price, it's definitely you can't beat it. So there you go.
So would you dare say that you've got 99 problems, but a bourbon ain't one?
That is true. 99 problems, but a bourbon ain't one.
Okay. I was just
Yeah,
curious about that.
yeah.
So how does this we have not, sorry. I keep forgetting the good part.
This is the good part.
How cheers to that.
Cheers.
How does this complement what is already on the bar?
Well, by now, I mean we're like at bottle probably close to bottle 20 or something. So this one's not going to have like the complexity that a lot of them are, and that's okay because you're going to want some bottles on your bar that are kind of multi-use, I guess what is what you would say. But and we do have some that we've talked about, some uh a lot shit.
And apparently, I've never been on live television before.
Like Evan Williams bottled and bond, though that's a good all around bourbon that it's cheap enough that you can do whatever you want to with it. And so this is another one that's it doesn't have the complexity that a lot of them do, but it's a good multi use bourbon. Um, And so for the price, I think it's, you know, I think when I was talking about, like Woodford Double Oak in that episode, like that's one you would not want to, mix with anything. I mean, you do what you want with your bourbon, but I wouldn't mix like Woodford Double Oak, but I wouldn't have a problem mixing this with something or drinking it straight. I mean, it's really good straight. It's just, you know, it's different, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But it's got some different characteristics to it. But that's I think that's how it complements our bar is
Sure.
it adds just one more product that we could have some multi use with.
So I remember doing a episode one time, and we had mentioned, and this is not. I'm going to kind of stray here for a minute, but we had mentioned that some of the bourbons that we do, we actually cook with, because bourbon
Mhm.
is just as much a part of culinary arts as it is
Right.
anything else. Would this? I mean, would you consider this one to be one that would be good in the culinary side of it as well?
Yeah, for sure. This when I get to like the tasting notes and stuff, you'll see why. But yeah, absolutely. This would be one that I wouldn't hesitate to cook with or you know any of that. So yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, in season one, excuse me, we talked about the label meaning and the history behind the product of whatever distillery. But I want to talk about the label in terms of who distilled it, who aged it, kind of the behind the scenes type stuff. Can you elaborate on that?
Um, yes, and so it's actually I'm gonna have to look at my notes because it's been a while since I've kind of gone over these, but it's actually a funny story. To me, it's a funny story. So Ezra Brooks was created by Frank Silverman in 1957, and it's a sourced bottle. It was sourced then. It's sourced now. It was a sourced bottle, and kind of to give you some ideas of what was going on at the time. In the 50s, Jack Daniels was, a pretty big product, but it was kind of in demand. They had low supply. So, kind of a funny story. What this Frank Silverman did is he completely made up the name Ezra Brooks. So he wanted a bourbon that kind of filled that gap of Jack Daniels. So he wanted a name, and back then, I guess, you didn't have internet, so nobody really looked up and cared. Back then, people didn't care about the story behind their bourbon like we do now. I mean, people care about the bourbon. That's the reason you and I can do podcasts like this, because people want to know, like, who the distillery is. They want to know the story behind who made this. They want to know who made it, who aged it, people want to know all that stuff. But back then, nobody cared. So he made up this name completely out of the blue so that he could provide a product to fill that gap that Jack Daniels couldn't fill at the time. And it was a product named after someone, and it kind of almost, but the product was pretty similar, and so it helped fill that gap. And so in 1993, Ezra Brooks was purchased by Luxco, as we talked about earlier, which is a St. Louis company, and it's still to this day, even though it's produced by Lux Row, it is still a sourced product. So I think that's kind of funny, and it goes to show you a little bit of the, I won't say pattern of the bourbon industry or whatever, but it definitely shows you, how the bourbon industry can work, because a lot of times you just kind of assume, I'm buying a product from Luxco. They've distilled it. They do whatever, but it's not. It's a source product. Everything from the name Ezra Brooks to the fact that Lux Row doesn't make it, it's just almost like a ghost product. And I think that is the coolest, funniest thing. And so that's I like it because of that. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but that's why I like it.
You know what's funny to me, man, is like and we've talked about this before online and offline. I'm a sucker for a good story just as much as I am a sucker for good bourbon. And
Right.
dude, whenever I hear things like Uncle Nearest or Jack Daniels or Evan Williams or insert name here, there's always a story behind the label, right?
Right.
And to know that like Ezra Brooks, like, all right, we're gonna name it. All right, let's put out this bourbon called John Smith. He's a ghost figure, but we're gonna fight Jack Daniels with Ezra
You
Brooks.
know,
Who's Ezra Brooks,
I, I'm
boss?
I'm not sure that this ever happened, but I would love to think that in the 50s, right there, you have Jack Daniels, and probably back then, I mean, everybody knew that it was named after a real man and just whatever. I
Sure.
would love to think that this Frank Silverman guy was sitting around, with his buddies or sitting around trying to figure out like how, Jack Daniels is kind of leaving a void out there, and people are, because back then, I mean, you got to think about this is the time like Frank Sinatra was pushing Jack Daniels, so like,
Oh yeah,
it was like in the 50s and 60s. So I mean, this was,
it
their
was a
time
golden
to
drink.
really, yeah. So that like it was their time to rise, and so I would love to just think that this guy's sitting around going, all right, there's a void there. How can we fill it? All right, I got this great idea. Let's make up a name. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to research it. Nobody's going to want to find out who Ezra. Let's just make up this name. Well, then fast forward, 20 or 30 years. So when people start to care, and so when people are looking up names like Elijah Craig, oh, he was a Baptist minister, and oh, that's a cool story. Oh, Evan Williams, he was a harbor master in Louisville, and he was a distiller. Oh, that's great. Ezra Brooks, what the hell? This he's not even a real person. Like I would love to just imagine like the people behind this label going, crap. Like now people care about this stuff, and I just think that's the funniest story. And I'm probably romanticizing it a little bit, but I just think it's awesome. I think it's funny.
Do you think that they have like a light at the distillery? Like, there's one guy and he's manning like the red phone, and whenever people are like, "I wonder what the story behind Ezra Brooks is," they're like, "Bring, call headquarters, and they're on to us."
Right, right. Hit the alarm button. Dude, that's so funny.
That's hilarious. Well, let's talk a little bit about what's in the bottle. Like, what's the mash bill? Are there any specific aging techniques? I know last week we talked about distilling types. What makes this product special in itself?
Well, so here's the funny thing. It is by an undisclosed distillery. So there is the whoever makes Ezra Brooks, whoever officially distills it, it is a Kentucky distillery because it literally says, hang on, watch this.
Hey, you look like a guy named Ezra Brooks that I know.
It says distilled and aged in Kentucky, bottled for Lux Road Distilleries in Bardstown, Kentucky. So we know it was distilled by a Kentucky distiller, which I want to take a time out and say this. That is one of the other things that I think is super cool about the bourbon industry. And I'm not sure, other than other whiskeys, I think do this, but there's no other industry, I don't think, that does it the way that they do it. I mean, could you imagine if like Coke had, Coke and Coke Zero but Pepsi actually made Diet Coke for Coke. I mean, you just don't see that. Or, Post makes one cereal that they give to Kellogg so that they can sell it. Like you don't see that in any other industry, but you have literally one distillery, Lux Row, who is another distillery, a competitor is making product and selling it to their competitors so that they can be put side by side on a shelf. So
Never
I
thought
just
about
think
it like that.
I just think it's so cool. I think that's an awesome like you have I mean don't get me wrong in the bourbon industry there certainly are like some cutthroat angles and cutthroat things about the bourbon industry, but by and large there are things like this that it's like all in all, I think the bourbon distilleries, their main goal is to put bourbon ahead of everything else. Their main job is to put bourbon ahead of Scotch, ahead of Irish whiskey, ahead of Japanese whiskey, ahead of tequila, ahead of vodka, whatever. So I think in that respects they work together for that mission. But I think it's super cool that they do that. So with all that being said, nobody knows truly the distillery that makes Ezra Brooks. However, The mash bill is 78% corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley, which happens to be the exact high rye mash bill of Heaven Hill products. So if you think in terms of like Evan Williams or Elijah Craig, it's the same mash bill. So it leads a lot of kind of researchers and busybodies in the bourbon industry that do a lot of like snooping around. It leads a lot of those people to believe that it's most likely a Heaven Hill product.
Okay.
But like I said, it's distilled and sold to Lux Row, and they sell it, and it's a awesome story and an awesome product.
I want to briefly go back to the industry for just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm a fanboy on the conspiracy theory here. You had said that like Post doesn't do this, and Coke doesn't do this, and Pepsi and whatever. So, do you think that the bourbon industry, for one of two reasons, do you think because, and I want to say this, 2019 I was deployed, and I remember watching the news from back home, and I can't remember what distillery it was that caught fire and lost like a whole entire barrel house. But the entire, was it Evan Williams? I mean, was it the Jim Beam distillery?
Jim
2019.
20. Well, there was in 2019 a Jim. No, it was a Sazerac one that collapsed, and they
Yes,
lost
that's
like
it.
yeah. And so, but you're thinking the fire you're thinking of in 1996, a Heaven Hill warehouse caught on fire, and I believe they lost like 3 complete warehouses of
Maybe I'm
product.
getting those two confused. I know this one collapsed. And one of the most beautiful things, I was actually talking to the guys that I was deployed with, because they always hear the stories of the moonshiners at gunpoint. They hate each other. And I was like, dude, the bourbon community gathered around and was donating barrels to this company to keep them afloat. Do you think that maybe the bourbon industry, I know this, I'm kind of veering off track again, but do you think that maybe the bourbon industry it's a competitive, but it's a friendly competitive. Like, hey, I want to beat you in the best way that I can, but I don't want to see you fail.
I'll say this, man. I think like any company you have different people in the company. So I mean, sure, like for sure, the executives at Heaven Hill or the executives at Jim Beam aren't going to be giving trade secrets away. So that's a given. But I think for the most part, any company, you have the corporate people, so you have like the advertisers and all that, and they're not working with each other. They're the ones that are putting out the advertisements that we're better than so and so, or so and so, whatever. But I will say this: the people that make it. I mean, I have many friends in the bourbon industry. I have many distiller friends, and I know for a fact that when one of my distiller friends is their mash is acting up, or it's not, doesn't taste right, they got some kind of bacteria, I know for a fact they call other distillers in the area and say, hey bro, like my mash is tasting sour, my mash is tasting this or that, and the other distillers will say, hey, try this, try to do this, because at the end of the day, these guys don't want to be, you don't want to be on the other side of that and be like, my stuff is turning out terrible, so I'm going to call my friend, and then your friend's like, yeah, but remember last week when I called you, you didn't help me, so whatever. So there's that aspect to it. But I think for the most part, and I say this for the most part, I think the producers, the distillers, the people that are like on the ground doing the work, I mean, I think they cheer for each other for the most part, and I think they want to see each other succeed
Yeah.
because they feed off each other, and I know they study each other, and so man, if distiller A is doing this and it's working, then I'm gonna try it, and so they do that. So there is some friendly competition, and that goes way back. I mean, I remember I did I did a film a couple months ago with my buddy Steve, and it was about this old distiller at Jim Beam. His name was Jerry Dalton, and he's the only distiller in Jim Beam history that wasn't family. But he talked about when he first got in the distilling industry, he worked for Barton 1792, but he lived right behind Booker Noe, who was the master distiller at Jim Beam. And he said every day they would come home from work, eat dinner, with their respective families, and then meet at the back fence and talk about, how was your day? Well, we had this trouble. We'll try this. So, I mean, it went back into, the 80s and the 70s. I mean, it went that far back that they were helping each other. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a camaraderie thing, but I think it's the overall mission, I think, is that this community wants to put bourbon ahead of everything else. And I think you would go to Scotland and find the same thing, like,
Sure.
distillers or blenders or mixer, the people, different distilleries are willing to kind of, help each other out because they want Scotch to be the number one, so you have that, but you also do have of course the corporate loggers get involved and they'll, company A will sue company B because your bottle looks too much like mine. So there's that
Absolutely.
aspect of it too. But I can assure you, as far as my distiller friends are concerned, they hate that part of it. They don't want to have anything to do with that part of it. They want to have, they want to be the
Handshake and a man's word.
right.
Well, okay. Now back to the business side of it.
All right.
So if the same mash bill as it is in Evan Williams and Elijah Craig, and possibly distilled by Heaven Hill, maybe. Why not just buy that bourbon?
Well, that's a good question, and frankly, that's none of your business. Like, no, just kidding. No, seriously, that is a good question, and places when you think about places like Heaven Hill or like the big guys, Jim Beam, you think of like Buffalo Trace, they will have the same mash bill for different products. So it's not like, if you look at, Jim Beam, for instance, I mean, they have Jim Beam, they have Devil's Cut, they have, Black Label, they have um, uh, Knob Creek. I mean, the list can go on and on for the products they have. They don't have different mash bills for every single one of those, but what they do is what fits in a certain mash bill, or let's just go ahead and talk about Heaven Hill. We've already talked about them. Like this particular mash bill fits with Evan Williams and Elijah Craig. Those are two different products, the same mash bill. They put in the same barrels, they put in the same rick houses, but the reason you would consider something like this over just a traditional Evan Williams or Elijah Craig or whatever is because these companies, they do a good job of separating their products. So they have master tasters that like literally that's their job is to taste these products and say, you know what, this one fits in this category, this one fits in this category, and they take it so seriously that you would think like, okay, well, Elijah Craig and Evan Williams, it's the same mash bill, it's the same product. It is not the same product. It's two different products. It's two, it could be aged differently. It could be in different parts of the warehouse. It could be whatever it is. They take it that seriously. So it's not like, let's assume this is Evan Williams' product. It's not like Evan Williams is going to say, well, we got enough barrels of our own, so here's some barrels, make your own product. It's not that at all. This, and I will say, man, and whenever you come visit and you'll try some of this doesn't taste like Evan Williams. It doesn't taste like Elijah Craig. It doesn't taste like those products. It has its own unique product. And so in the same way, these same people are that are on this tasting panel say this fits this uh it fits this, in this parameter of characteristic that we like. So in essence, you are getting a different product. I mean, it's really as simple as that. So, I would dare say that it's not just, you would think like somebody like Heaven Hill, they're just, well, we got 20,000 extra barrels. Let's just throw some this way and create a different product. It's not that at all. The characteristics, the flavor profiles are completely different. So it's a different product.
I think that that's cool about the bourbon industry. The simple fact that it's like, hey, we can take, because a lot of people think that like, oh, you're giving your recipe away. It is so much more than a recipe.
Oh yeah,
It's
100%.
temperature of the warehouse, elevation of the warehouse. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even I will, and I've argued this, dude, for many years. I would even say a season of distillation, whether you distill in the spring or fall. You know what I mean?
Dude, I've had a distiller friend of mine, Alan Bishop, has told me one time, he was like, I can take the same exact mash, and if I'm pissed off one day and I distill it, you're gonna taste my anger in that distillate. And the next day I could run the second batch of the same exact, fermented mash. And, I had a good night at home. I left home, kissed my wife. We had a good morning, and you can taste the love in it. He's like, even to that degree, you can taste the differences in a mash. And that makes sense because, I mean, if you think about just the technical aspect of distilling, if I'm pissed off and I'm just turning knobs and just I don't care. I don't care if my steam's too high. I don't care if this. I mean, it's going to reflect in that
Sure.
versus, I'm really taking care of to make sure that the temperature's right, that we're running slow, that we're doing this. I mean, all that plays a part in it.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right, and he's right. I mean, that's a real thing. Okay, so let's talk about product line. Are
Okay.
there any other expressions of this product, or is this a standalone?
So this is not a standalone. So this product was introduced in 2021, and as of right now, we have, as far as the Ezra Brooks is concerned, there's the Ezra Brooks 99, the Ezra Brooks 7-year barrel strength, and both of those replace the old Ezra 7-year 101. That was discontinued in 2019. And there's also the Ezra Brooks 99 rye. There's an Ezra Brooks 7-year straight rye. And recently, which I have a bottle of this, recently they've come out with the Ezra Brooks cask strength.
I saw
And
that yesterday.
so, yeah, this is a really nice product. I mean, this, as far as the Ezra Brook line is concerned, it's probably a pretty good step up the cash strength. So the price is gonna be a little bit more, but dude,
Sure.
it's a pretty solid. That's a pretty solid bourbon. But that's kind of what there is right now.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about availability, um, how hard the product is to find, and what should anyone expect to pay for this?
So the Ezra Brooks 99 shouldn't be hard to find at all. It's a mid shelf bourbon. So if you think in terms of like bottom shelf, mid shelf, top shelf, it's a mid shelf bourbon, um, and it's pretty much available anywhere. And so Booze App puts this at a $25 MSRP, the shelf price of 27. But I'll say this, I got mine for like 23 bucks.
Okay.
And so, like I said earlier, when we talked about why I brought this to the table, it doesn't have the complexity of a lot of other bourbons, but for 20 bucks to 23 bucks, I mean, that I've seen it as low as like 19 bucks, like 19.99, 20 bucks. But for that price, it's like we talked about, man. You can mix with it, you can marinate meat in it, you can use it for cooking, you can use it for cocktails, you can use it for whatever. I don't have a problem putting a $20 bottle on my shelf that really is good. I mean, this tastes good. I don't mind putting that on my shelf when, you know, to use for, have a multi-use thing. It's a $20 bottle and you can use it for whatever you want. I don't mind that at all.
So you said that you don't have a problem putting a $23, $25 bottle that tastes good. So what does this taste like? So we've done podcasts before on Evan Williams. We've done podcasts. I'm almost positive we've done one on Elijah Craig. What is the taste profile of this? Because we know, and the reason I'm wording it like this is because we know that maybe the mash bill is the same. What are the taste profiles of this?
So this, based on the fact that it says it's a Ezra Brooks Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, and there's no age statement on it, so it's at least a 4-year product. But with that being said, right off the bat, which I do like this, you get a fair amount of corn. So, when I say corn, I mean like think in terms of like cornbread. So just kind of a nice sweet, um, nice sweet corn or cornbread. Um, and I think it's because it's a high, 78% corn. So I think that's why you're getting all that corn, right off the front. But there's a slight hint because it's sweet, that kind of cornbread. I get like a little bit of vanilla off of it. But that's nothing new for like a bourbon. The front palate, like a lot of bourbons, I get like strong vanilla with some like baking spices. So I mean, think of like not quite like a dark brown sugar or anything like that, but it's just kind of that warm. I mean, almost like, dude. I mean, I wish my palate was better than this, but all I can think of like is like like some grandma's cookies or something. Just that kind of warm.
Are you talking about like nutmeg and stuff like that, or are you?
Maybe a little bit of that, but I mean, nothing's really that pronounced. It's just a lot of sweetness and
Okay, like a
it's
warm
got a
sweet, like a warm vanilla
but
sugar.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that it very mid palate kind of kicks in, and it turns into this like almost like earthy in a good way though, like this very earthy, sweet, earthy kind of almost grassy finish. Well, mid palate, and then it's got a pretty long finish. So, as I sit here right now, I mean, I still have like that finish is still there, but it comes back to that sweet vanilla. So, it's not, when I think of in terms of like it being a very complex, it's not really complex. It's not, there are bourbons I taste. It's like, man, I taste like cherry and I taste, custard, or I taste those kind of things. It's not like that. It's just kind of a plain vanilla sweetness, but there's that corn that's going in, and then it kind of mid palate hits a kind of a grassy, sweet grassy kind of thing. But so it's not really, really too complex, but it's a good drink. I mean, it's not something that there are bourbons that I won't drink straight or I won't drink neat because it's very non-complex. But this one has enough complexity that it goes from kind of the sweetness to like an earthy back to sweetness. So it's one that, like I said, it would stand up as a standalone drink.
Okay. Next time I'm out and about, I'm gonna pick up a bottle of that.
Yeah, it's not bad, dude. For the price, it's a good drink, and like we've said, I mean that you won't feel bad about using it for other things at the price point that it is.
So could we agree that Ezra Brooks 99 should be on the bar, and that we've done the real Ezra Brooks justice?
I was gonna say that. I would only agree that we put this on there if we can drink to the real Ezra Brooks.
Here, here.
Here, here, real Ezra Brooks.
Real Ezra Brooks, the real man, the myth, the legend.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Hats off to you, Mr. Ezra.
Mr. Brooks, thank you so much for all that you've done. Dude, I mean, honestly, on a real note, isn't that the coolest story? Like, so I think a lot of people that are like bourbon influencers and people that are kind of know-it-alls. And let me say this, let me dog lick for a second.
Do a dog lick.
I was in a bourbon group the other day on Facebook, and this guy that was in there asked a simple question like, everybody's touting this bourbon, blah, 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 but I don't really like it, whatever. And man, people started ripping him. And I just thought, it kind of irritates me when you get in these groups and people are just a-holes about everything. And so I commented, I said, for some reason, when people start their bourbon journey, they become gods among men and they're not afraid to tell you so. And they're, whatever, because people are just a-holes. And in saying that, people will, there's a lot of people that'll be like, I would never touch Ezra Brooks because they made the name up and it's blah, blah, it's a fake bourbon. Dude, I think that's cool. I think it's funny. And for that reason right there, I mean, I would continue to buy this just because.
You had the guts to freaking make up a name?
I mean, but, you think of like how many bourbons that are out there that truly are not what they say they are. I mean, I'm not going to call them out, but I know there's a handful of them that their story isn't what it's supposed to be, but they go by it.
At least 40 to 50%.
Sure. And God, you know as well as I do, when I lived in Tennessee, there were like 190 moonshine distilleries, and every single one of them was, this is my pappy's recipe and he makes the best and you won't taste anything better. And it's like, yeah, it's mediocre at best. So, but dude, all that to say, man, there's all kind of a-holes in this industry. These people that think they're the God's gift of bourbon and they would never drink this because it's Ezra Brooks is a made up name and it's a made up and it's a sourced product. But they're clear about it. Like, not only are we sourcing this, we're sourcing the person. This person doesn't even exist. So
here's our fake person. Enjoy.
Yeah, dude. My hat's off to Lux Row, Luxco, and Ezra Brooks. May he rest in peace. My hat's off to them, man. I love everything. Dude, when I researched this for this podcast, I was like, I became an instant fan of Ezra Brooks because of just the story behind it.
Yeah. You're like me, dude. You're a sucker for a good story. I will never, as a matter of fact, that's the reason I buy stuff like that anymore is like, hold up. You mean to tell me that you fooled an entire generation thinking that this dude was real? Give me two, please.
Off, bro. Yeah. Dude, that's it, man.
Well, I will see you next week.
Yes, sir.
Same bad time, same bad channel.
Same bad channel. And I don't think we can leave without making sure that people know that Eric sucks.
Eric does suck, and he is nothing more than original.
Yes, he is original. I agree with that.
Eric, here's to you.
Here's to you, Eric. Love you, man. Love you, Eric.
Love you, man. Love you, Eric.
We'll see you next week, buddy. If you like what you heard tonight, check us out on these social media platforms. Just search for My Journey Through the American Spirits. Also, check us out on our new website,